Let's go 哥哥。攞齊嘢啊嘛，哥哥。聽緊。鬆仔。Yeah, I tell you, you won't know what says. It's about politics and stuff. News and politics. 嚇？嚇？廣東話嚟㗎。聽咗 listen。Want to listen? 唔該晒。
呢個就係施比如講嘅嗰個 version 嘅。實際嘅原因係乜嘢？實際原因就係你有錢自己搞得掂嗰班，你好明顯就唔係投票俾我嗰班啦。佢咪再將嗰班批評再縮細佢。咁咧即係 make sure 咧，我所有唔滿意我嗰班人咧，本身佢已經係唔滿意我㗎啦，冇多咗人。而家另外咧就 pensioners 咧仲面對緊另外一個危機，就係咧本身而家你儲咗嘅退休金咧，你係可以一次性咧係將佢裏面25%嘅財產拎出嚟，係唔需要再繳付任何嘅稅項。而嗰筆財產嘅上限咧，好似係250幾千咁上下，即係都幾可觀嘅數。但係有啲乜嘢人係會有200幾千攞出嚟，只係繳付退休金嘅25%咧？即係講緊係佢有成1000萬退休金嘅喎。呢個有成1000萬退休金嘅人，好明顯就唔係你工黨目標嗰班打工仔嗰班普通嘅打工仔啦。
工黨就係呢邊。
佢做嘅呢一個咁樣嘅加稅措施，而家就係要去限制嗰啲人可以攞翻啲錢出嚟。其實嗰個25%個 small cap 咧係一個永久性嘅措施，本身喺度咗好耐，打算改。但係工黨今年嘅10月咧就有機會會將嗰個 percent 提高，可能降到20%、15%，甚至乎再低，甚至乎取消埋都有可能，即係每一分每一個都要交稅都有咁嘅可能性。問題係在於佢係咪真係可以攞到咁多錢咧？嗰個唔係個目的咯，而係佢想喺呢一件事裏面建立佢嗰個威信，再加上佢可以係排除咗佢自己嘅支持者做。支持者點樣做？支持者就係嗰啲 child benefit，我唔加俾你咯。喂，調翻轉加俾你個唔係減你喎，你諗下，仲要係有後再變反到有 suspend 嚟嘅，好明顯睇到佢個高佢個動機咧，就喺呢一度。而家做緊嘅所有嘅嘢都係高 冇錯，由 day one 開始，由佢選舉競選開始，佢嘅目標並唔係10年，最少係10年。所以有好多人咧留言咧喺度講話，哇點算啊？一邊上去點捱呢5年啊？快啲5年之後咧，我哋都走佢咧。即係我自己就冇咁樂觀嘅，因為我個人認為咧，佢而家咧係已經喺一個好早嘅階段嗰度咧，已經喺度 prepare 佢下一屆嘅競選策略。因為我尋日都有講啦，咁嗰啲咩10年政策，即係搞治安係要10年，搞個監獄嘅監獄位都要10年。咁好明顯，佢已經係將所有嘅佢嘅 progress 就推到去5年嗰個限期，第4、第5年咧，你先會見到有少少成效。即係佢係已經將嗰個古仔係鋪排好嘅，頭嗰幾年咧都將會好痛苦嘅，然之後咧到第4、第5年競選嘅時間咧，佢就不斷俾啲條考你，等你有個幻覺覺得，咦，佢真係好估喎，做得唔錯喎，嗰啲係俾佢係啦，俾佢啲選民點解？所以點解佢要畫得咁分得咁細，要有咁多藉口去講呢啲事？因為佢要解釋啊嘛，點解你對某一啲人特別好，對某一啲人咧就特別唔好咧？有啲人咧要俾更加多錢，因為唔係富貴嘅問題，主要係佢支持者係支持佢哋，係反對佢嘅問題。本身佢已經認定嗰班人係反對佢嘅話咧，佢就會喺嗰一班人嗰度壓榨佢。如果係嗰班人本身係支持佢嘅話，佢就會俾嗰啲支持嘅人咧有更加多嘅。譬如好似之前呢一個火車司機係嘛，有一個好好嘅例子啦。瘋狂加佢10幾個% 嘅人工，但係冇任何 obligation，係冇條件需要 fulfill 嘅。佢哋可以繼續罷工㗎，咁但係問題係會定係唔會我哋唔知啦。咁但係你點可能你政府一嘢過喺個財政困難嘅時間，砰一聲加10幾個% 俾翻火車司機，但係然之後咧你就喺退休金嗰度咧就不斷壓榨呢一班退休嘅長者，因為第一佢哋唔係你嘅擁躉啦，第二咧佢哋冇生產力。即係佢哋對嗰個社會經濟冇帶嚟任何正面嘅益處，但係問題係佢哋喺以前係對個國家有貢獻嘅嘛，佢以前有做過嘢啊嘛。你而家對於呢個退休金要有咁多嘅關卡俾佢哋，仲要慢慢將個範圍收窄，佢哋有儲錢嘅喎，啲錢係屬於佢嘅喎，佢係之前辛苦咗落嚟，而家享受佢個成果嘅時間，呢個天公地道嘅事。點解你可以去做出呢一啲咁樣嘅嘢，去壓榨佢哋咧？然之後咧，你仲要大義凜然咁樣話呢個係做一個艱難嘅決定，我哋係好唔受歡迎。喂，大佬啊，即係等於咩啊？你而家
夠鐘。
咧係一家之主，你出去揾錢開飯嘅，你冇錢攞翻嚟，你仲欠到一屁股債，你就話最衰都係個可觀啦，佢派牌派得唔好啊，或者話最衰俾個朋友點啦，個朋友叫辛偉成，我過去14年都跟佢賭錢啊，而家咪輸咗都係碌個差。咁好啦，咁你有冇錢啊？冇錢開飯點算啊？翻屋企咪老豆老母攞喎。喂，你老豆老母已經養到你30幾40歲，你唔出去自己揾嘢做，出去自己賺錢，你仲要翻嚟問老豆老母攞？即係點樣攞？佢哋上去你屋企，去你個阿爸阿媽嗰張床下面咧個枕頭打開咧有個嘉頓餅乾罐，咁就攞裡面嗰啲青蟹啊，嗰啲20蚊紙啊，嗰啲50蚊紙啊，咁一卷卷咁啊攞走。喂，大佬呢個咁樣叫合理咩？咁啊跟住佢就同你講我阿爸阿媽，我咧即係我知道咁樣做咧，你哋會好。但係我都係為頭家着想啊！你知唔知呢個？係啊，好艱難決定嚟㗎！我攞嘅時候，我含住兩個眼淚，水汪汪咁樣攞㗎。而家即係而家我感覺上咧，就好似你以前睇 TVB 嗰啲劇集咧，嗰個仆街後底乸咧，就做埋啲咁樣嘅嘢，然之後仲要喺度大義凜然講到自己有幾正。不過你知唔知最諷刺嘅係乜嘢咧？最諷刺係當年 Theresa May 仲係做緊呢個首相嘅時間，即係保守黨嘅徐生執政啦。佢當年咧就提出過咧有一系列嘅措施咧，係想要做一個緊縮政策，咁啊就去將一啲嘅 benefit 咧就係可能係削減啊，或者係 cut 咗佢嘅。其中咧就包括呢個 winter fuel payment。咁但係當其時咧就冇通過，因為受到其他大部分嘅黨派反對啦，包括當其時嘅工黨，而當其時咧工黨係嘈得最大聲嘅。佢點樣嘈咧？佢當其時咧就揾咗一個研究機構，嗰個研究機構咧專門幫工黨去做一啲研究。咁啊調查顯示咧，2017年嗰陣時啊，如果 cut 咗呢一個 winter fuel payment 嘅話，即係好似見到而家咁樣嘅政策嘅話咧， 將會有大概3850個長者，即係攞退休金嘅長者，會因為咁樣咧係有生命，即係可能佢哋會為咗唔開電器啊，導致到身體嘅機能上出現問題啊，會更加多病。其實某程度上我哋增加緊 NHS 嘅負擔，而且亦都會有一啲嘅長者係因為咁樣可能捱過冬。咁呢一個調查，呢一個咁嘅統計係佢自己工黨去提出嘅做喎，而目的係為咗啲乜嘢咧？為咗反對當其時保守黨呢一個削減呢個 benefit 嘅政策。但係而家佢自己上咗台做啲咩咧？啱啱就係佢自己反對嘅嘢，佢就會做咗。好啦 ，anyway 啦，講第二單新聞啦。第二單新聞咧，又係工黨一啲新嘅政策咧，又係想去打擊呢個 anti-social behaviour。咁啊，其實某程度上嚟講咧，都同改善治安係有一啲關係啦，都幾直接嘅關係。咁我哋亦都係喺即係睇佢嘅政綱嘅時間咧，其中一個我個人嚟講比較期待會出現嘅一樣嘢，即係其他嗰啲咩加稅啊呢啲咁樣嘅情況咧，咁就麻麻地啦。咁但係你話如果你改善治安嘅問題，我都想睇下你用啲乜嘢手段。
聽唔到。
咁啊，大家都知道呢個咧 anti-behaviour 呢一個行為咧，反社會行為咧，其實都幾令人煩嘅。即係譬如喺街上面咧，有啲無聊人做一啲無聊嘢啦，就會即係好似好影響其他人啦，譬如吐口水啊，就黐啲喺個加你個頭度啊，鬆孖啲前都講過呢類咁嘅反社會嘅行為。咁政府點樣可以有效去控制咧？咁啊，而家咧就工黨話將會推出一樣嘢叫做 respect order， 中文咧就叫做尊重令。咁即係點解係邊個尊重邊個？我尊重佢定佢尊重我咧？即係強迫佢尊重我咧咁樣。咁而家咧目前咧就未有具體嘅資料，呢一個尊重令係點樣運作嘅？係啊，呢雙尊重何時了啊？邊個尊重邊個？點樣尊重未有人知道。咁但係話咧，目的就係為咗嚟打擊呢一個 anti-social behaviour。今日新聞咧都同樣提到一樣嘢咧，就話工黨咧喺1998年嘅時間，由呢個貝利亞執政嘅年代咧，曾經推出嗰樣嘢咧，就叫做 ASBO 嘅。鬆太有印象，呢家新聞嚟 send 俾我。
細個啊嘛，嗰陣時啲人話你唔好做啊，因為 ASBO 㗎。
乜嘢叫 ASBO？ASBO
You speak to this guy, Derek Evans. He was a West Virginia state legislator. He went to the Capitol on January 6th. He got into the Capitol. He wasn't violent, but he was there. He was part of the riot. He was arrested. In court, he sounded very contrite. He said he was very sorry. The judge gave him a relatively light sentence, 3 months. But when he came out, he was seeing a very different Gene. He said he was a hostage.
That was a hostage. Yeah. All these guys in prison right now are hostages, 100%. What do you think these people in solitary confinement in the DC Gulag are? We're living under more tyranny today than our founding fathers did in 1775. You can't be serious. Our founding fathers are rolling over in their graves right now. You should do some investigating into how the Federal Reserve came about. Go look at why we pay taxes. Go look at the interest that they're making on this. Go look at who gets to decide whether we print more money or not. It's all an illusion.
You can't be serious. It's quite an innocent phrase when John McEnroe used not so much now. I suppose the challenge to that, as it was the first time round, is that yes, a lot of Americans do believe in all this stuff, but actually the vast majority, and it's a huge country, don't actually. And in a sense, it hasn't really infected the body politic, perhaps as much as we might suggest. Well, I mean, you say that, and obviously these beliefs are on a spectrum, right? Some people believe that January 6th was a fake, it was staged, and that's kind of at the extreme end of the spectrum. Other people at the less extreme end of the spectrum believe that these Jan 6 prosecutions are sort of political prosecutions and that they are being used as sort of targets to Trump support, which is sort of the lesser end of that spectrum. I do keep trotting out this stat, though, which is that when Americans were asked to poll in the last year, whether they thought that no matter who was in charge of the government or other organizations, a single group of people secretly decided eventually rule the world together. Guess how many people just agreed with that?
Yeah, and obviously
41%. So say that because they want to feel a bit when they're talking. Anyway, we go into the roots of all of this in the podcast and where it all comes from. The John Birch Society. Well, the roots. So yes, you mentioned the John Birch Society. So this cabal group. Back in the 50s, wasn't it, that had all sorts of weird theories about things that were happening. And in a sense, I suppose the fascinating thing, and you bring this out in Series 1 as well, not much has changed in the sense that there's always been a strand of American thinking. The paranoid style in American politics, yes, but it's very much back right now. So the paranoid style is back. The John Birches, who saw everything through the prism of a diabolical communist conspiracy. Robert Welch, who was the founder of this group, thought that President Eisenhower was a secret communist agent. But these guys were seen as cranks, even by arch conservatives in the 60s and 70s. Now, the John Birch Society is back, and it's burrowing its way into Republican parties in states like Idaho. So you look into these you mentioned as well right at the beginning that it's not just on the right, but it's also on the left that there is this conspiracist mindset. How so? What examples of that?
Well, so this kind of broad idea that the politicians you vote for are not really shots, not really right? I think this idea has become much more prevalent after the financial crisis of 2008, right? But there's this kind of cabal of bankers, financiers, elites who really calling the shots. Whoever you vote for, it doesn't really matter. Now, that conspiracy theory, or maybe it's just the way the world works, right? Is that a conspiracy theory or not? That is prevalent on the left, and there's a sort of horseshoe effect going on here, which at its very extremes ends up looking like something that's quite similar to the kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories around the Rothschilds and blah 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 that we've seen for many decades. But that it spans left and right.
Gabriel Gatehouse, thank you very much. It is out today, isn't it?
It is.
So yes, you can listen to it on BBC Sounds. It'll be on Radio 4 tomorrow. Right, but don't listen for another quarter of an hour.
Yes, hold on. Start working again. It is coming up to a quarter to 9. That's Beyonce's hit single, Texas Hold'em, from her album Cowboy Carter. Make her the first black woman in history to have a #1 country song and a #1 country album. And yet, she has not been nominated for a Country Music Award, which some believe is a snub to her as a black woman. Some, including Taylor Crumpton, a music, pop culture, and politics writer from Dallas. When I spoke to her earlier, she told me why Beyonce might really be expected to have been on that list of nominees.
Cowboy Carter was a historical album. Not only did Beyonce make history as the first black woman to top Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart, she's also the first black woman to have led Billboard's Top Country Albums chart. In addition to those two historical factors, 4 songs from the album, Levi Jeans, Jolene, Two Most Wanted, Texas Hold'em, were chart-topping songs from the album. So not only did she dominate music, but one has to understand the Beyonce effect was prominent in fashion. Sales for Western wear went up, searches for women's cowboy boots went up, and former First Lady Michelle Obama, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris, congratulated her on the album. It dominated the fields of music, fashion, and politics, so one would assume that the CMAs would have awarded her a nomination, but unfortunately, that reality did not happen.
And yet, yes, the Country Music Awards snubbed, is that the right word? Snubbed Beyonce?
Yes, the same Country Music Awards as people remember in 2016 when she performed Daddy Lessons from Lemonade with the Chicks. She was subjected to a abundance of anti-black and anti-woman comments from attendees in the audience.
And is that what you think it is? You think it is race? That she is trying to, muscle in on white country music?
It's not only race, but gender. Folks forget that country music is black, it's Mexican, it's indigenous. But however, the mainstream country music industry has tried to erase any type of contribution of black people, of Mexican people, of indigenous people. So for a black woman like Beyonce, who's from Texas in the southern United States, and Texas has given so much to country music. What is country music without Willie Nelson? They have deemed her ineligible, illegitimate to participate in country music because of her race and gender.
You say take that, but there are huge country music stars in the world.
There are, but they too have experienced the glass ceiling moment where they can only achieve so much in the industry. You know, Bryn Morris, Casey Musgrave, they're 2 women who have spoken out about their gender they have experienced. I read a report earlier about how when Casey Musgraves was coming up, a male country DJ objectified her and she vocalized that, and then she's blacklisted from plays on the radio. There's still these archaic ways in which women cannot achieve full autonomy and agency in country music.
Given the fact that Beyonce is one of the world's biggest stars, which she
There are some like Beyonce, but I think that so many they vocalize concerns that yes, how the economy is critically acclaimed and breaking the scene, it would not be the catalyst for systemic change. And now, much later after the album's release, we're seeing that their concerns are loud and true because only 2 black acts were nominated.
David Hudson, John Dallas, thank you very much for joining me. Just 12 minutes to 9. All primary school age children should be given 3 meals to help tackle the obesity crisis that is called. Experts including the Royal College of Pediatricians. Child health builder Professor Steve Taylor is on the line. Who's the president of the Royal College of Performance Studios? Yes, good morning. What would the impact be?
I think the impact would be a number of things for children themselves, most important, but most significantly that we'd be able to be sure that we have at least one nutritious meal every nutritional day, which is the thing that feeds children. That's fair, I don't think that better than school grounds. A very better distribution that it will have an impact on obesity, so we've got a some obesity overall, but it will have an impact. But also have an impact on our mental health, the biggest reason for children to come into hospital is that they've got teeth pulled out, and that will exercise. And finally, the bigger picture is that children are our foundation as a society, and I think this would be a statement that we as a society value our children and want to do our best for children.
How do you do it in parts of the UK? So in Wales or Ireland, children, Scotland, Ireland, of course there's a scheme in London as well. Regularly talking about the practice of last year, as well actually, on this program. Before the election. And do you get any, I mean what you say, last 3 hours, what do you say in practice?
Well, I mean, obviously, I have to point it out, it's the kind thing to do, I think it's the right thing to do, I think it's the sensible thing to do.
Do you have a sense of what the cost would be?
Now, that I cannot answer. I suspect that when you ask me like that, lots of different questions, and I suspect it depends on what the cost is. So there will be a numerical financial cost in the short term, but in the long term, there will be benefits to that. So things really don't know how long will work out.
That in itself is a fascinating answer. We're exactly the same about President Trump. This is today, but actually there isn't cost possibility for the long-term savings. But they might not have savings with the same budget, etc., etc. And that's the difference for politicians, isn't it?
You're not answering that question for me. No, you're right. I mean, it's getting more and more that people who are increasing their children who will have sacrificed state. So if you wanted to remove the burden on the residents, you know, you can look at the expensive prevention. And children, as I said before, children are our foundation. If you plant in our children, things will get a lot better. But as you pointed out, we need to have a long-term investment strategy to do.
Professor, it's exactly it is now 8 minutes to 9. Where is our bus? So the question we have launched on the programme is today, and the day the government announced that in future, councils will be allowed to own and control bus services outside the cities, that is. And we have today to cover stories of bus services not run for profit, serving a vital need. Sean Warren is operations manager for a Little White Bus in the Upper Yorkshire Dales. Jamie Cole, managing director of Blackpool Transport. Good morning to you, mate.
Good morning.
Sean, first of all, the Little White Bus operates in beautiful parts of the world. How does it work? You use volunteers, you know?
Yes, we use a blend of volunteers and paid drivers. We're very lucky in the fact that we have
a network of about 30 extremely dedicated professional volunteers that help us deliver the service.
And have you found demand for it?
Oh, yes, huge demand for it. I mean, we're extremely fortunate in the fact that, especially in the summer, we crisscross major walking routes face-to-face, Pennine Way. So the number of passengers we carry throughout the year is about 40,000.
So lots of tourists, but also local people putting it to lifeline.
Absolutely, and it's all about allowing people to stay in the homes in which many of them actually were born and grew up, rather than leaving the small villages and hamlets that form the Upper Dales, and perhaps moving away so that the whole community becomes a network of holding homes.
When you say stay in the homes, you mean because they can get to healthcare, they can get to other services by your bus?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole concept created by North Yorkshire Council is access to essential services, which is, you know, can I go shopping, can I go to the doctors, can I go to the dentist, and we are there to provide that service either through the bus or through our hospital and medical transport to get people to be able to do that.
And Jane Cole in Blackpool, you also run transport system, bus system that is not profit driven.
Yeah, we're run by Blackpool Council, and so we're what is called a municipal bus operator. So when the Transport Act in 1985 came into fruition, there were a number of councils who decided to keep their bus companies, and we're one of those. So any profits we make either goes back to the council and they reinvest that in the town, or the council reinvest any profits back into Blackpool Transport System.
You're still competing with other bus companies there, aren't you, private ones under the current rules?
Yes, we are, and every competition is healthy. I think what's really pleased me most about the government's recognition, really, about how vital bus services are in growing the economy and in reducing carbon emissions. So I think that, you know, working with operators is a good thing, and it gives people choices.
Will yesterday's announcement make any difference, Jane?
It will make a huge difference to major cities and to local authorities that want to be able to specify what bus service they want to see within their regions. I think that's an important thing, that the local authority can have a hand in developing models with transport operators to better serve communities. I think it depends on...
Councils already support local bus services, you know, because, I mean, if there is competition, but there are not many people that consider that up here, and there's also very, very low population in the Upper Dales. So I think that what North Yorkshire is doing, very similar to Blackpool, are that, you know, the routes go out for tender, and we tender against everybody else, so they are already deeply involved. And I agree with Jane that I see this working for urban environments, and there are urban environments in North Yorkshire, but perhaps less so for those very remote rural areas.
Well, Sean Warren and Jane Cole, thank you not least for making me dream of walking the Yorkshire Dales or being on the beach in Blackpool, which is a nice way to slowly bring the programme to a close this morning.
Brings us to 3 minutes to 9. We'll be marking the death of James Earl Jones this morning, best known, of course, as the voice of Darth Vader, but so many other credits as well for his recognisable face and even more for his recognisable voice. Adrian Lester starred with him in a production of Tennessee Williams' Kevin Hart in London and sent us this tribute.
He was a giant in our profession. James was an amazing actor. I remember watching him play Troy Maxon in Fences. He was brilliant. Getting to work with him and be on stage with him. He was humble, he was kind, he was generous. He was always searching for ways to do our scene better. He would step on stage every night, and I'd look at him and he'd look at me, and I had no idea how the scene was going to go. He didn't improvise or play to his wings, but he always deepened and surprised me every single show, every matinee. He never missed a beat. This is a man who's twice my age, and I'm running to keep up with him. His talent was incredible, and he was an example. His professionalism was an example to everybody who worked with him. He will be sorely, sorely missed. He was a great man.
That was Adrian Lester, and to end the programme, now a taste of James Earl Jones reading Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven.
Once upon a midnight gently rapping on the door. There's some visitor I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in bleak December, and each separate dying ember brought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly had I sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rarely radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here, forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now to still the beating of my heart I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating
James Earl Jones was an extraordinary voice, but much more than a voice. An actor who we were hearing earlier knew that he could write stories and could make them come alive. That's all from us. However, today, Laura Cooper and Dan McCann, the studio director with Nathan Sheen. Have a good day.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. Around 1,700 offenders are being released early today as part of government efforts to address overcrowding in jails in England and Wales. The Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, said every available measure has been taken to protect the public. Chief Inspector of Prisons, Tony Taylor, told Today it was inevitable some people would reoffend, but acknowledged ministers had to act.
The government had no choice. The bath was overflowing and they had to turn the taps off or they had to let the water out. And inevitably they had to let some prisoners go. Particularly with the rioters coming in over the last few weeks, we were just completely running out of space.
The Hamas-run Civil Defense Agency in Gaza says an Israeli attack near the southern city of Khan Yunis has killed 40 people. The strike hit on the...
He's trying to go into joined-up writing, but the people that are covering him don't use joined-up writing. They use great big headlines and they only look to attack. They don't really look to explain. And every Prime Minister has to deal with this at some point in the cycle of life. Yeah. But for this Prime Minister, he's having to deal with it straight away. Now, I think there's something else that's going on, which is there's a desperation in Downing Street Kew saying that the previous government has failed. It is true that the prisons are full. It is true that the NHS is not working. All these things are true, but there is only limited time, as everybody says, that you can say this.
Yeah. Well, David, let's turn to crisis the government couldn't predict, and that's how the Prime Minister government handled the UK riots over the summer. Just a couple of thoughts from you, because I know you've got some very interesting views about this. I was interested the Prime Minister wasn't very visible during that period, and obviously enormously effective behind the scenes. And I just want to make the point, I don't think Prime Ministers need to be praised. If people have confidence that the Prime Minister's in control, that's fine. Everyone knows he's a distinguished lawyer. People, I think, instinctively knew that his hand was absolutely on the tiller during that period. So I just wanted to kind of frame that in PR terms. But you've had some interesting insights on the Cobra meetings.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really interesting, Simon, is how the communication service and the communicators in the Cabinet Office in Cobra during the riots put together a plan to reach potential rioters in their own homes, on their computers, on their phones. And I understand that this was ordered by the Prime Minister in Cobra and was delivered and had quite a lot of success. So you've got to remember that these were racist attacks with the intent to harm the colour, especially Muslim, and especially Muslims. The risk at the time that they were facing in Cobra was how do you stop the law and order falling over entirely? The risk was that you might have had full-fledged huge race riots across the UK, quite close to it. And one of the things that happens in these situations, you've been in those meetings yourself, Simon, is that the communications people and the security people together are tasked with how can we reach these people, how can we influence the behaviour of the public in real time to stop this getting worse. And one of the things that happened behind the scenes, which is that the Prime Minister tasked both of the security service and the communicators to reach those people through social media. So the government paid for the taxpayers paying advertising, TikTok, Facebook, how
very targeted, those people that they think might be targeted to right, with one simple message, which is, if you go out onto the street, you will be jailed. You will go to prison. You will go to prison for a long time. Now, I'm told that those messages which were discussed and approved in Cobra had in total 70 million impressions. This was a big strategy. It wasn't just a few messages put on Facebook. You know, you might ask how on earth they target rioters. Well, they went for men, then they went for the age groups that they thought they might be in, then they went for the geographies that they might be in. And they just like any advertiser, it said to me, quote unquote, it was important to get into their silos. I think they're very pleased with how that exercise went, and I think they think that it had some major mitigating force in a very difficult situation.
What a fascinating insight. Maybe, David, should move on to probably a PR own goal, and that was the Prime Minister's decision to take down a portrait of Margaret Thatcher in his study, number 10. It did result in some bad press. Now, David, can I just tell you a story about this? Because I happened to be in the room when that portrait of Margaret Thatcher, Julia Oswald, was unveiled in 2009 by the then Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. I did think this is my last opportunity ever to meet Margaret Thatcher. I went up to her. She's a tiny, tiny woman, and she said, I can't really hear you, but who are you? And I said, it's one of this. I'm Gordon Brown's bird of Bingham. And she looked at me with those wonderful blue eyes, and she said, well, I hope you've got a thing. So, I think it's just worth putting that in context, and maybe to listen now to what Keir Starmer said on Laura Frundsberg about his decision to take down Margaret Thatcher's portrait on the stage. Just hear a little bit.
Yeah, this is not actually about Margaret Thatcher. I don't like I had it when I was in Korea. I used to have this pictures of judges and stuff. I don't like it. I like landscape. So this is my study, my private picture I think is good. I didn't want a picture of anyone.
Yes, she went on to say we will make an exception to your read without the sort of thing. But I think this works because he's actually turned it around. So I like this touch, which is so important for Prime Ministers. And actually, I think this is probably Cat's problem. What do you think?
Well, I think two things. First thing is, I think this is self-inflicted. We're going to talk about that in a second. And secondly, this says so much about our country. I mean, when Keir Starmer gets back in his car, he's going to be talking about what's happening in Israel, or he's going to talk about what's happening in Ukraine, he's talking about what's happening in Europe, all these macro strategic huge issues that are on his plate. He goes in to talk to Laura, and it was a great interview, but he ends up talking about obsess about things that are not important. It does not matter which way the balance works and whether he has a picture of Margaret Thatcher there or not. So I think within Downing Street and communication strategy there, they have to work out how do we stop this stuff happening. There are enough problems for the host family without sort of handling this thing. I mean, honestly, if you wanted to see at the edge of the Daily Mail or the Telegraph, a story that you know they would salivate over, moving a picture of Margaret Thatcher all fly high on the list. It turns out it wasn't true. You know, it turns out that it wasn't meant for the reasons those people thought. We had a front page after front page about why, because the leadership of the current president of this country are old, they remember, and revere Thatcher, and most people voted for Keir Starmer. They don't remember her. She died quite a long time ago. And one of the challenges that Downing Street have, this is a really point, is that the media plays the role of
you're quite right, David. The caravan moves on, but that is relentless history. Now, remember, if you have any burning PR questions you want answered, and maybe you might have tips on managing your own personal PR work, we now have our very own WhatsApp postbag.
A reminder of how it works. If you want to send us a question, go to WhatsApp and text the word FAM to 03700 100 444. Then start a new message with your question, or text, or better still,
Make sure you're subscribed to us on BBC Sound so you don't miss them. Until next time, thanks for listening. Bye.
My favourite one is a very
1970s.
Hello again. It's been heated in the Commons that England to cut national political capital. Is it possible to justify it? This is not the way to make good policy, this is not good government.
There are 818,000 pensioners who are under, right on the gentleman's watch, didn't get pension credit for their
Labour didn't get enough back in its own MPs, or split to two, one who voted for the House and one who stayed. And my guess was that this bill was getting too long, equivalent to 1,000. Meanwhile, in Westminster, we're about to get the results of the latest elimination round of the Conservative Party leadership race will bring the result. Also on here,
If I was a child, I would never speak on the last one. You're in there, Glad, obviously, because there is so many inmates in there. The youngsters are like really struggling.
we'll look at how day one of urgent prison release has been done. In the US, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump face each other tonight for the first, maybe last time.
The vote is not the political president, but to be an American Republican.
We'll look ahead to that. And can artificial intelligence please recognize your death? We'll hear from a man trying to its accountants. But the start is words go by Johnson.
The government has warned the Commons vote on its plan to scrap winter fuel payments for all the poorest nations. MPs rejected a Conservative motion calling for a policy adopted by a majority of 120. It's our national correspondent, Alex Wilson.
China holds today of Pension Secretary Liz Kendall doubled down on the argument that ministers are having to take tough decisions as a result of the economic legacy left by the last government, being disputed by the Conservatives, who say cutting the winter fuel allowance for millions of pensioners was a political choice that caused hardship. In the end, Sir Starmer's sizable majority meant he saw off efforts for opposition MPs to block the measure. But while only one Labour MP voted against the government, all 50 others didn't register a vote. Some would have had valid reasons to be away from Westminster, but there are clearly some Labour MPs worried about the impact of this policy.
When Sir Starmer told the TUC conference that writing in technical hours would close time for the haunting challenge of Labour's inheritance from the Conservatives. He said tough decisions were arising. The system in the UK was on a new path to growth. Public inquiry into the Lions House was opened. As to how NHS managers handled concerns raised by doctors about criminals when she worked with protests at Chester Hospital. Inquiry's chair, Lady Justice Milner, stressed it was not her role to assess the safety of veterans' murder convictions, to be questioned by some medical and statistical experts. Richard Scorer is a lawyer who represents the families of their victims.
From all the families came into this process with a whole set of questions they want to see answered, particularly about the hospital response, about why they went into the dark, about the emerging picture of losing at these problems. My sense is that the inquiry is really determined to do a comprehensive and meticulous examination of those issues.
Government prisoners in England and Wales have been released early in the first phase of screening inmates in the underground in jails. A total of around 5,500 inmates will serve 80% of their sentence while home visits. The government has insisted that all the offenders involved have release plans, but the adjudicating prisoners warned it's inevitable that some will reoffend. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is accusing Iran of supplying short-range ballistic missiles to Russia. Electronics news outlets have got reports Secretary David Lammy as Blinken and the development of a dramatic escalation, warning that missiles will probably be used against Ukraine within weeks. He's agreed sanctions against Iran in the unveiled response.
As Iran's destabilizing activity spread, so does Russia, sowing even greater insecurity in their regions and around the world. Iran's new president and foreign minister have repeatedly said that they want to restore engagement with Europe. They want to issue sanctions relief. Destabilizing actions like these will achieve exactly the opposite.
former leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, has appeared in court in Newry to deny historical sex offence charges. He's accused of rape, 4 counts of gross indecency, and 13 counts of indecent assault. His wife, Lady Donaldson, pleaded not guilty to 3 charges related to aiding and abetting. The trial has been scheduled for March next year. A man has been jailed for 12 weeks and handed a restraining order for sending abusive emails to the Labour MP Jess Phillips in relation to the conflict in Gaza. One, Nabil Arif, who's 36 and from Birmingham, said she would burn until her skin was no more. Spectator magazine has been sold for £100 million to the hedge fund tycoon Sir Paul Marshall, who's a major investor in GB News. The title went back on sale earlier this year after a bid by an Abu Dhabi-based consortium collapsed. The deal has prompted the Spectator chairman, Andrew Neil, to resign after he previously said hedge funds should not be allowed to own news publications because of the risk of conflict of interest.
Tom, thank you very much. Before we move on, I'll just tell you that Mel Strike has been eliminated from the leadership race of the Conservative Party. Robert Jenrick was top of the ballot among MPs. We will talk about where that leaves the race a little later in the programme. We'll start on a different vote. The vote on winter fuel allowance cuts. The Labour government won it, but without the support of all their MPs. So, yes, got the support. 348 supported, 228 supported the Conservative opposition, trying to annul the move. One Labour MP, John Tristan, voted against the government, and 53, as you heard, didn't vote. Abstained would be a word you might use, but don't use that word, because not voting doesn't mean they were rebelling as such. They may have had some other reason for not being around, and registered that and had a bit of permission from the whip.
Slightly incoherent rants or behaving in some sort of intimidating way to what is only the second female candidate as a major presidential nominee.
Sarah, thanks for that. Well, look, earlier I spoke to Republican strategist and a veteran debate coach, Brett O'Donnell. He's prepared many presidential candidates for these televised clashes, from George W. Bush and Mitt Romney to Ron DeSantis. First, how important is tonight's debate?
This may be the most consequential presidential debate in American political history. The first debate between Biden and Trump back in June was the most consequential because it ended Joe Biden's candidacy. But this one may be even more consequential because it may be the only time that Kamala Harris is in this format, and so might be the only chance that the American public has a chance to get to know what is, according to the data, one of the most unknown candidates in American political presidential history.
Right. Now, let's suppose you were advising Kamala Harris on how to play this debate. What would your advice to her be?
Donald Trump has a thin skin. I would go after him at a personal level, talk about things that might irritate him, and try to get him angry and have an outburst on the stage that would make me look good. So for Kamala Harris, it's all about focusing on personality and persona and trying to contrast likability as opposed to getting bogged down in politics. The problem with that, though, is the American public are hurting from an economy that's been bad for almost 4 years, and they are looking for someone who will lead them out of this and has a plan to do so. So she may do that at the expense of really giving a vision for where she can take the country. And as Donald Trump said the other night in a town hall, you might not like me, but you should vote for me because I'd be a better president. So I think that's probably what to do.
Okay, and what would your advice be to her about how to react?
Just the opposite of Kamala Harris. It would be stay focused on policy. Make her own her record. In fact, she does own the last 3.5 years. Don't let her get away with looking like a challenger or a change agent. And then write the following words: dangerously liberal and pale and weak at the top of her page, and everything she says should point toward those 4 words.
Well, it's He said, I think they're not being allowed to take notes in today, so he won't be able to, he'll have to learn the words off by heart, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the rules.
Sure. But when he walks out on stage, write those at the top of the page, and then connect with the audience underneath of it, and do everything in his power to go after her. He's got to make this election a referendum on her and the status quo.
And you have been there coaching President Trump. I don't think you coached Trump himself.
I have not.
My guess is that he would be a difficult one to coach. I mean, he's an unguided missile. I mean, you can tell him focus on this, focus on that, use these words, but I don't know, would he listen to what you say?
I don't know. I've never been given that opportunity. But here's the one thing I do know. He's done a ton of interviews. And there's no substitute for being in the bright light. And I think that's a disadvantage for Kamala Harris. My guess is, right now, deep down, she's probably regretting not doing more interviews, because that gives you a chance to try out answers, to get used to comfortable to being peppered with questions from the press rather than your staff. We'll see what happens. You know, in the first debate between Biden and Trump, he was very disciplined in that first 30, 40 minutes. He was blinking in and reading things. And so, we're seeing a kind of performance comparison today.
Harris has campaigned in a very joyous way, which has been seen for some as a very positive thing in contrast with but others have mocked her for the laughing, and Trump has mocked her for that. What should her stance be? Her posture? How should she behave? Do you think, dealing with that as an issue?
I think because people know so little, he has to be serious and presidential. It's a governor. What gets you in the door is that first impression of, can I see behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office making the tough decisions when there is a crisis and our country is on the line.
Republican debate coach Brett McDonald, they're looking ahead to that next year. 2 in the morning on multiple hours in this country. The chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court has said his team are doing all they can to deliver justice for crimes committed by Russia. Karim Khan speaking on a visit to Kyiv, and a visit to the largest children's hospital there that was struck by a missile, you'll remember, back in July, during the Mornington Baptist attack that killed at least 46 people across the country. Well, the ICC has already issued arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin and senior members of the Russian army, a move which Moscow has condemned. Our Europe correspondent Nick Beak has just printed this report from that children's hospital.